want to be held anymore. The baby's sister said, protested, wept, says, it's my baby. And Adrian said, it's not your baby, it's your family's baby. The little sister said, but when you go home, the baby stays here. And Adrian stood to her full height, put her hands on her hips, and sputtered, I have a cat. It's fascinating to see how children work out relationships. How they find where they fit and where they belong. It is difficult for the second child to fit in the family. She is younger, smaller, inexperienced. She rarely gets to do anything first. It's hard. It's also difficult for the firstborn when number 2 comes along, for she is now dethroned. No longer queen, no longer the sole object of her parents' attention and devotion. According to the psychological theory built on the works of Alfred Adler, where we belong is the primary motivation of our behavior from the time we are born. Where do I fit? Where do I belong? Who am I in relation to my family and to other people? These are questions that haunt us and drive us. In this day of rapid change, how and where we belong is a deep concern and a driving force. Fortunate are those who discover their place in positive, productive relationships. Unfortunate are those, like youths, for example, who find a place in a gang to be preferable to no place at all. Have you worked out your place in life? Do you know where you fit? Where you belong? In Peter's letter, he tells his readers how they fit and where they belong. And his message is fresh and applicable to us. Peter says we are living stones. Not rolling stones, but living stones. Maybe that could be the name of the church band Denny Baumgartner is putting together for our outreach service, the Living Stone. I'm not quite sure what Peter meant by calling us stones, calling us rocks, but because Jesus changed his name from Simon to Peter, which in Greek means rock, maybe Peter had rocks on his brain and is calling us all rocks. Anyway, Peter is using the metaphor of a spiritual house, a temple, a church. Jesus is the cornerstone on which the entire building rests, and we are the stones God is using to build the spiritual house, the rest of the house. So where you fit, where you belong, where you can rest, relax, and be yourself because you fit, is the spiritual community of faith we call our church. In Israel, where there's only sand and limestone, the stones were carefully cut and placed together without mortar. So the stones had to fit perfectly together. As living stones being built into a spiritual house, you and I are constantly being shaped. The rough edges are made smooth. The bumps are evened out. The warts are surgically removed. Of course, I guess warts don't grow on rocks, but you get the point. Jesus used the image of pruning. Spiritual growth is not necessarily easy. Growth often involves pain, surgery, change. In chapter 2, verse 2, Peter tells us that we are like infants and the spiritual milk so that we may grow into salvation. Salvation, the relationship with Jesus Christ that extends into eternity, where our inheritance waits, our undefiled, imperishable, and unfading inheritance. Salvation. Salvation, Peter says, is a process. It's not a one-time event. Salvation is a growing, developing process. And through prayer, study, and discipline, we are pruned. We are shaped into living stones that God can put together in a strong, sturdy, spiritual house. The spiritual house is big and extends even into heaven. The walls of our spiritual house go beyond the physical into the spiritual. Today is All Saints Sunday, when we remember and celebrate the living stones of our spiritual house who are now in heaven. The big house. The spiritual house replaces the Jewish temple, says Peter. The temple of God is no longer a physical building, but a community of people joined together like stones in a house. The spiritual house, as a spiritual house, we are to discharge the functions previously performed by the priests. You and I are now the priests, all of us together. Now, what do priests do? Priests intercede on behalf of people. Intercede with God on behalf of people by offering sacrifices. God has called us together. Paul used the metaphor of a body. Together we are like the body of Christ. Peter used the metaphor of a building. Together we are living stones in the spiritual house. Interceding and offering sacrifices. We intercede with God on behalf of the world. Our church, our spiritual house, believes in the power of prayer. The foundation of our church is prayer. And last Thursday evening, the fireside room was filled with prayer warriors celebrating last quarter's prayer ministry and planning the next quarter. We are taking very seriously our role as intercessor. Our church is a link between God and our neighborhood. We're a link. Your church is now responding to God's call to be in mission on behalf of our neighborhood. We have a deep concern for children who go home to an empty house. And we want to provide an after-school ministry to them. That's our mission. We have a deep concern for the singles and the single parents and the two-parent families who are struggling to find where they belong. And we want to offer an alternative, non-traditional kind of worship service in the hope and expectation that they will be attracted to our spiritual house and discover that Jesus Christ is the cornerstone upon which they also can build their lives. We have been given an exciting mission. And to do what God is calling us to do on behalf of people in need requires prayer and sacrifice. Spiritual sacrifices, Peter calls